So, other things that were a surprise. City dropped points this weekend. They got stung by the bees. The men's not going to the World Cup. Tony did a number on them. The other thing that isn't maybe a surprise to non-believers of Potter, Chelsea lost again. United pulled out the fire. And I guess this isn't a surprise. It hasn't been a surprise for the longest time. Arsenal won again, and they maintain their spot at the top. But now we're going into the World Cup break, and this is somewhat the halfway point. What do we make of the season thus far? What do we make of the results on the weekend? And I want to start with City. Do you think City are losing their mojo at this point? Or do you think it was just a blip and come December 20-something, when the EPL resumes, they'll be back on it? Or do you think there's something to worry about?
You know what? I've been struggling to make sense of the City season because they get Haaland, right? And we see the gluttony of goals. We see the amount of hat-tricks he's scoring at home. And he looks odds-on favourite to break that all-time Premier League goal-scoring record. And they look like a juggernaut that cannot be stopped. But in actual fact, when you look at the results, they have a 3-3 against Newcastle. They have then another draw prior at Villa, you know. And now, like, there's the loss against Liverpool, which you can excuse. But then it's this season's Liverpool. And then there's this loss against Brentford. They did go behind against Crystal Palace, and you thought Palace are going to do them again at home. But then they managed to come back and they put 4 past Palace after being 2-0 down. And this is something that we'd seen coming towards the end of last season, that they keep conceding. 2, they keep going behind in games, and they have to claw their way out of that and keep coming back from those, thinking that is not sustainable. But then, as I'm saying, when you look at their home record, at some point, I think they'd scored like about 42 goals in their last 10 games, having won all 10 games in a row. So the result against Brentford is not expected at all. True. Especially because Brentford, after that game against United, they've not been quite there, you know. So it comes out of the blue, but then you have to take a step back and you have to actually wonder what is actually happening in this Manchester City season. And while I did make the point last time out that, well, if Liverpool do get owners who are as rich as City, maybe they can build up a depth that City have, because City are able to interchange players or willy-nilly as they require. But it seems to me that that carousel at the back actually is a problem that is catching up to them. Because you have, to begin with, a João Cancelo who's not been in good form this season.
Nope.
He's had moments. You have his outside of the foot assists. You have him terrorizing. In the one game he was playing as a left back, where he was just like the man of the match in that performance. But then overall, this is not the guy we've seen the last few seasons. You also have Diaz, who's been in and out of the team because of injury. Stones has been in and out of the team because of injury. Stones was out of favour the one particular season when Laporte had come in. And then Laporte goes down with injury, and then Stones was the starting centre-back alongside Diaz. But then now he's down. And then Laporte, who also then made his way back into the team, now he's also down with injury. Now you have a person like Akanji, who did get an assist over the weekend. He's playing on a more regular basis. This is the last move they made in the transfer window. So this is a guy they did want. So he's not some riffraff they picked up because they're just based on their bench or whatever the case may be. And he's playing next to a Nathan Ake, who was signed for relatively big money at the time, but he was signed to be a cover centre-back. He's playing major minutes now as well. And João Cancelo is not playing at left-back because Kyle Walker is out. Kyle Walker, the person who, when you listen to English pundits and English fans, that as soon as he's fit, they want him back in the England national team at the World Cup. He is a vital player, not only for England, but in terms of what he's able to give Manchester City, where if João Cancelo has the freedom of the city, where he can go wherever. In recent years, we've seen that Kyle Walker is not as progressive, or is not as adventurous, rather. He's someone who helps out at the back, which is why he also plays as a right centre-back for England. And he's that guy. If you have someone through and go, he's the guy. You know, he's recovering, he's right there, and he's stopping these attacks. And now you see how vital he is. Now you see how vital it is to have that back four who is established and who's playing week in and week out. That is not the case. They are still brilliant going forward, but they are struggling at the back to keep teams out. And if those injuries are not sorted out, then there is a very great big chance that the team who are on top of the table might actually steal this from Manchester City.
And I think, the acquisition of Haaland, as much as it's a plus, it's a good thing, because when he's on song, he's scoring a lot of goals, as you've mentioned. But I think it's changed their playing style a bit, because when Kevin De Bruyne gets the ball, he's looking for Haaland all the time. When Bernardo Silva gets the ball, they're looking for Haaland all the time. Whereas City didn't have a central reference in prior seasons. They were just scoring all free, and everyone was chipping in. You get Mahrez scoring goals, you get Foden scoring goals, Kevin De Bruyne, yes, Bernardo Silva scoring goals as well. And now that they're looking for Haaland all the time, Haaland Maga value, they really look lost on the pitch. Like, it's almost like Kevin has got nothing to do, because in the game against Brentford, he didn't show up as well. And now that you're looking for Aubameyang to do the work. So a look at Brentford. The last win was in October on the 14th, 2-0 against Brighton at home. The following week, they draw not Chelsea. The next week, they are beaten 4-0 by Aston Villa. The following week, what Brentford do is they draw with Wolves 1-1. The following week, Brentford draw 2-2 near Nottingham Forest. And then they pull up the surprise. You don't see it coming, because, as you say, they were genuinely struggling. They beat Man United, looked like they were doing good things, but they were genuinely struggling. Their pace hurt City all the time. And you're saying, with them having that unsettled back four, if you run at City, you always have a chance. If you run at City, even if Abu Laporte, even if Abu Diaz, just because of how they're set up, because they don't have the cover. Cancelo's always out of position. Walker always out of position. And so every time you go at City with pace, you've got a chance. So I think that is worrying, because if City don't score the goals, if City don't dominate possession, they're in trouble. When you look at the game against Brighton, the second half was a completely different game, because Brighton went at them. It's okay, Namako, you're 2 up, but we still want some of this game. And they made it quite nervous, I guess. I guess maybe the goals were more comfortable for City, but in terms of performance, it was a bit more nervous for City at the end in terms of closing out the game, because Brighton were coming at them all the time. So this is Guardiola's Achilles heel in all these teams, which his defense hasn't quite been the strongest, but the count is that they have the ball anyway, so they don't have to be tested all that much. But this is interesting, because they do have a late surge. They will come at Arsenal later on in the season, but I think dropping points right now is going to be very interesting. There are a few fixtures in the Christmas period when the EPL comes back. They'll make things a bit interesting for the two front leaders of the league. So if City drop points, it's going to be on. It's going to be on.
You know the comment that you make, because I was thinking about this as well. I don't know how good of a coach Pep Guardiola is on the defensive side of the ball, because with his Barcelona team, what you saw with them is that when they lost the ball, they were recovering it very quickly. They were pressing like anything I've never seen up to that point, And this is what I've always said. Like when people praise Puyol, I'm just like,
no.
I saw that guy do splits, courtesy of Angel Di Maria, and a PK as well. Like PK also is a legend of Barcelona, but like I don't think you can just transplant PK and put him into teams that require defensive stability, and he would have given you that. I always thought that the players on the defensive side of the ball always looked better because of the fact of what was happening in front of them with the ball. And when I'm talking about defensive, I'm talking about the centre-backs, because the full-backs were on there as part of the attack. An Alba or a Dani Alves on the other side, those guys were part of what they were doing going forward. But in terms of what do they look like when you then beat that press, when you come through that midfield line and you are mashed up one-on-one, so to speak, against the defenders, then it's a matter of, are these guys actually good? Because I've heard, like, I want to say a prominent City fan talk about the fact that he's not a fan of Diaz, that we don't really know what we have in Diaz, because he's not being given an opportunity to be found out, because they've got the ball so much of the time, and more it seems, because even in the game against Brighton, they didn't have like a majority of the possession. So they may have taken that step back. As you say, like the way that they play the game may have been influenced for the negative by having a Haaland in there. Whereas if that is not quite working out, we cannot very quickly revert to what we have been up to this point, because they won the league last season without a recognized striker. And that was the perfect storm for a Guardiola coached team in terms of, we are just going to keep rotating it, moving it around, and creating space if you happen to be the person who finds themselves in a goal-scoring opportunity, because, we've shifted in a way where you've been presented the chance, you're the goal scorer, versus we've got this guy and he is the person that we're constantly looking for, So that would be interesting. That it actually does somehow come back to bite them in the you know what, where
Yeah.
he scores a whole lot of goals, but in terms of affecting the team, it does so negatively. This is not Messi at Barcelona under Pep, you know, where bunch of goals, but he knows how to play the right way within that system as well.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and we are finding out, like, defensively is Pep that guy? We will see, you know. So outside of that, Chuck, or maybe because of that, would you at this point put Arsenal as like favorites for this title?
Man, depending on the World Cup and if everyone comes back fit, I think that starting 11 has to be preserved for as long as you can. Obviously, there's the factor of burnout because of how the season is built now in terms of the World Cup and the games happening every other day, and then there's Europa as well. So if they can get their players fit, then for sure, because I mean, at this point you have to be convinced, which is not just luck or the rub of the green or they are properly good. They deserve to be where they are. And I mean, if you look at the fact that Gabriel tweeted, we're having another kick around with the boys against Brentford, the same team that troubled Man City. You have to look at those comparisons and say, well, Arsenal are properly good. And so they are favourites, and yes, because of the five-point cushion and the fact that they are playing good football. I mean, Nasser Wolves, they will grind it out and get those 2 goals. And that's the other thing that we keep saying or keep hearing from commentators and pundits, which a team that knows how to win ugly, they are the ones who can pull it out even when it's dark. So they are favourites. Arsenal are favourites.